So there's been a decent number of card reveals since I last talked about the new Riftbound cards, because we got cards on Wednesday, and then for some reason we got some cards on Thursday, which is not supposed to happen. I believe there was some issue with the timings, so my delay in getting this video out actually worked out pretty well, because now we also get to talk about Thursday's cards, which includes a card that I am not particularly happy about. I've been Doomer posting and honestly Schizo posting in the Riftbound community Discord ever since this card was announced, because oh my god, I am terrified of it. Riftbound is already an extremely fast game, and the arena's greatest enters the fray in a very scary way. Yeah, I'm gonna be entirely honest with you, I'm super scared of this battlefield. At the start of each player's first beginning phase, that player gains 1 point. Essentially, this is the reverse of Aspirants, a battlefield that was revealed to us not long ago that increases the point cap on the game by 1, a card that is intentionally trying to slow down the pace of the game, and the arena's greatest is doing the same, but in reverse. They're speeding up the game by 1. This is huge for any deck like Jinx, any deck like Teemo. I think Misfortune will end up being a really aggressive deck as well once we have the full card pool, and even still right now you can build Misfortune really aggressive. Basically, all of the aggressive decks are probably going to be running this battlefield, and it's going to be really oppressive to any deck that's passing on turn 1 more than half of the time. Yeah, super scary card, specifically in the 1v1 format, which is why I'm trying to actually play a bit more free-for-all and a bit more 2v2, because this is a terrifying card, and a lot of the playstyles that I like are severely impacted by this card, contextually with the rest of the quote-unquote meta game that we have right now. Obviously, as more cards get revealed, things could change, but this card is terrifying. I'm gonna bookend this video, so this is probably the worst news in this video. I dislike this card heavily. Don't get me wrong, it's a fun effect, but I am terrified of it. We will end off this video with a card that I'm super excited about from a design perspective. Before we get there, let's go over the other cards. So we have Call to Glory, a 3 energy order spell with as you play this, it's an action, and then it also reads, as you play this, you may spend a buff as an additional cost, and if you do, ignore this spell's cost. So it could be a 0 or 3 cost card, and it reads, give a unit +3 might. So this is the first thing that's really a quote-unquote combat trick for Order. They had Shen previously. There's not really a lot of buff synergy in yellow right now. I'm hoping we have more buff generators rather than buff synergy, and then maybe a card like Call to Glory can be a bit more flexible. So while I think the support for this card isn't here yet, the card on paper is really strong, and it should get better as we get more reveals. Buildwater Bully is a 6 energy, 6 might card with while I'm buffed, I have ganking. At first, I thought this card was relatively underwhelming, but as I got to see it in action a handful of times, I started to realize just how valuable a 6 energy, 6 might card is. Like, that's just like a good start to a card. No power cost required, it's flexible, it most reasonably slots into Set, which is a relatively power-hungry deck, so they appreciate access to something with a big body that isn't going to set them back on even more power because they're spending so much power in that deck. And even though on paper this card reads relatively vanilla, the ganking is relevant and the buff synergy is relevant. So I actually think this card is substantially better than I thought it was, based on the handful of games I've seen it been played in. Don't get me wrong, it'll never be like a meta staple or anything like that, but my first initial read of this card was way off. I thought this was like a more or less like a meme, like a Chillwind Yeti type of vanilla card, but in action it proves way better. Nothing but praise for Buildwater Bully, overperforming expectations, and I expect in set 1 he will remain in set decks. Captain Faren is a 4 energy, 1 power card with 5 might, and he reads other friendly units here have Assault 1. This is kind of like a mini version of the yellow version of Darius. Obviously it's not the same, right? +1 might is better than Assault 1 because +1 might means, let's say I have yellow Darius and red Darius at the same battlefield or at the same base. Super Mega Death Rocket can't kill it, but Captain Faren can't be used defensively like that. He can only be used offensively. With that said, it's still an interesting card. 5 might is an annoying threshold because it's vulnerable to a lot. If this sees play in anything, it's probably just Darius. I don't know if Darius wants to run this card. Honestly, the Darius deck is already relatively tight, and I don't expect it to be finding room for Captain Faren, but we'll tell in due time. But so far, not impressed. Maybe we get a card like give all assault cards +1 or something like that. Then maybe we can talk about Captain Faren. But right now, contextually with the cards we have, Captain Faren's pretty low on my list. Vayne Hunter is a 4 energy, 1 power card with 2 might, so off to a bad start. Hopefully her effect makes up for it. She has Assault 3. Okay, now we're talking. 5 might in total when attacking. And as she reads, if an opponent controls a battlefield, I enter ready. So she has like pseudo accelerate. And she also has, when I conquer, you may pay 1 to return me to the owner's hand. So she's built in protection. Most assault cards especially struggle with this weird dynamic where they're good at attacking, but then they're vulnerable after the fact. Vayne is saying, I'm good at attacking, but you can pay 1 and protect me when I would otherwise be vulnerable. The only issue I see with this card is we're committing a lot each turn, and I don't know if we're getting enough tempo out of it. It's going to be good reactively, and then if it's good reactively, protecting her will be less valuable because you have to wait for the opponent to touch a battlefield again for her to enter ready. But maybe that's a good way to offset her oppressive cost, right? She's 4 energy, 1 power. That's a lot of cost. You don't want to be playing this thing every single turn, but the fact that you have to wait for the opponent to touch a battlefield for her to enter ready, maybe that's enough to offset that huge cost. You can play the Vayne, pushing to a battlefield, return into your hand, then next turn, do something else, because they haven't touched a battlefield yet, so, develop a couple units or whatever, and then the following turn, if they are touching a battlefield because they swung against you, you push your Vayne again, and then you bounce it to hand. So even though this card can loop itself, I don't think this is the type of card you want to play every turn. It's just you want to return it to your hand, have the option to use it in the future. I don't think this is a card that, like, say, Jinx could get away with, because obviously she wants to dump her hand, and Vayne is specifically trying to bounce herself back to the hand. Who are the other red people? Volibear doesn't want this because it's not triggering his mighty effect. I think the best case for this deck is Darius, but the Darius deck is really tight right now, and I don't know if Vayne's going to make the cut. Honestly, it's not looking too great for Vayne. However, I do think in theory, on paper, Vayne seems pretty compelling in Darius. The idea of us being able to bounce the card back to the hand is more compelling because it means we can more reliably trigger Legion effects even when we're in the later stages of the game and may not otherwise have access to 2 cards to play per turn. Vayne is always a card that we can bounce back to our hand. Well, not always, but you understand what I'm saying. You're going to be able to bounce this card back to your hand and then try to trigger a Legion effect the following turn. If that's our goal, it's coming into the game in a very awkward moment. Like, it needs to be like turn, well, not turn, but you need an energy of like 7+ to reliably do this. There's going to be like this awkward spot at like from anywhere between 1 and like 6 where she's not going to reliably trigger Legion because you won't have enough energy to play her and the other card. And really, she's going to be best when you're at 9+, so you can do like her plus Darius or like her plus Scrapyard Champion or her plus some of the bigger cards in your deck. I will say my current list of Victor runs why am I forgetting the card? Harnessed Dragon, which is probably not going to be the case in like a fully optimized Darius list when we have all of the cards. So maybe Vayne takes that slot. I don't know. I'll have to experiment with it some more. But on paper, I think Vayne looks pretty good. We've got another battlefield, Bandletree. It's crazy I haven't had the chance to talk about this card yet. I feel like this card was revealed weeks ago. It wasn't. It was only like a day or 2 ago. Bandletree allows you to hide multiple hidden cards here. Typically, you can only hide 1 hidden card per battlefield. Bandletree says ignore that rule. You can actually play 2 hidden cards here. This is a crazy card for Teemo. It really feels like any unit at a battlefield with 2 hidden cards there is probably just surviving in the early stages of the game, which is perfect for Teemo. Teemo's current best strategy right now is just pushing early battlefields and then kind of never trying to let them go, just holding control of those and saying, those are my battlefields now, and I'm never giving them up. I want these battlefields. Let me keep them. And Bandletree's going to let you do that. So yeah, fantastic card. I will say, I feel like as I've played with this battlefield a bit more, I do want access to some more hidden Teemo cards. So we're going to need some more card reveals. But Teemo definitely feels a lot stronger now with this card. And definitely the next card, Invert Timelines. Invert Timelines is a 3 energy, 1 power card that reads each player discards their hand and then draws 4. This card changes the game. This card is crazy. Let's ignore what this does for opponents real quick and just focus on what this does for you. When you play contextually a certain way, this is just going to draw you 4. Really, this could draw you anywhere between, I guess, like 0 and 4 cards, or like negative or whatever 4 cards. But the ability for this card to get deeper into your deck is already a great start. Playing in an aggressive deck, we can try to empty our hand as quickly as possible and then play this card, and then that way we're mitigating or perhaps entirely removing the each player discards their hand part of the card. Hopefully this never actually comes up in a game, but theoretically you could have a Misfortune Buccaneer at your base, play Inverted Timelines, and then play 3 Flame Chompers to all 3 battlefields, which I want to see that happen just once in my life and then never again. But the idea there is pretty cool. However, I don't think this card will make its way into Jinx. This is going to be, just because Jinx already has access to that ability to refill her hand, and never really feels like she wants more cards in her hand. She usually just wants less cards in her hand. So even though this does have like a positive interaction with Flame Chompers, I don't think this is the card for Jinx. However, every other purple character is going to have a blast with this card, with the exception of probably Yasawa. So really, this is like a Teemo and Misfortune card, and I think it's going to be a great card, especially in Teemo, and I think in Misfortune, though Misfortune's a bit more up in the air about where her strategy is going exactly. I do think it's going to end up leaning into stuff with Inverted Timelines, or Invert Timelines, I should say. But definitely a really strong card for Teemo, and if you played Teemo before and after Invert Timelines was revealed, Invert Timelines has completely changed the way Teemo feels and the way that we build around Teemo. So huge plus for Invert Timelines, crazy card. Plus, this card could also be disruptive to green strategies, or really any strategy that is involving holding a large number of cards in hand. Volibear might be holding onto some crazy combo. Invert Timelines could disrupt that combo. Obviously, you could also be helping them find the combo pieces that they want to find, but yeah, obviously the each player part of this is also something to consider, both for free-for-all and in 1v1 and in 2v2, so but they all kind of mean different things in each of those formats, so yeah, lots to consider there. Oh my god, you could play like double aggro in 2v2, both of you dump your hand as quickly as possible, and then one of you plays Invert Timelines to help each other refill. Draven Showboat. Draven Showboat is a 5 energy, 1 power card with 3 might, and he reads, "My might is increased by your points." I don't think this will see the light of day in 1v1 or free-for-all. It seems just a touch too slow. With that said, in 2v2, this is a pretty interesting card. The end score in 2v2 is 11, which means we can get to plus 10 on Draven. I really don't know what deck wants this. I don't know, I guess maybe it's not the worst thing in Darius. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to think about this card and what it really means for the game. On paper, it seems relatively underwhelming to me, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't really see this card right now. And then lastly, the card I've been most excited about over the last couple days, and it is Yasawa Rudder. Unfortunately, I don't think this card will be very good, but the idea is so fun. It's a 5 energy, 1 power purple card with 4 might, and it reads, "Ganking, the 3rd time I move in a turn, you score 1 point." There's only a couple ways to do this in the game right now. Most consistently, you're going to do it with Last Breath. You could do it with Madden Marauder. Obviously, you have the default movement that Yasawa is generating. Then you use Madden Marauder or Last Breath, and then using your Yasawa Legend ability to allow him to move from base to battlefield again. Or you could do any of those things in any particular order. Well, I guess you couldn't do the Legend ability and the Last Breath. You would have to, somewhere in there, you would have to use the regular movement. The regular movement couldn't be the last thing that you do, because then you won't get the quote-unquote ready proc. But yes, there's only really 2 ways to make this work right now. I will say, I assume that there's going to be more movement effects in the base game, so I'm actually quite hopeful that this will find some more synergy that we don't have access to right now. One thing to consider about this effect is that it's not just the 1 point, right? Generally, if we're moving around, we're probably going to be scoring more points. So this type of card, if it's in the opponent's base, you have to be really scared, because if they're able to touch it, especially in a free-for-all game, right? If they're able to touch all 3 battlefields with these 3 pieces of movement, they're actually getting 4 points out of that, not just 3, right? They're getting the 1, 2, 3 from the Conquer, and then they're getting the 1 from this. And then the same thing is true in 1v1, right? They're not just getting the 1 point here, they're getting the 2 points from each of the battlefields, so they can get 3 points in a single turn. The more effects like this that are scoring artificial points, I like, because not only is it just like generally my playstyle, I love types of effects in card games that break the rules or somehow artificially contribute to a victory that isn't necessarily the standard win conditions, but it also makes it so the game feels a little bit less the more effects that exist like this, the more dynamic the point scores. Right now, everything's relatively formulaic. The equation of the opponent gets 2 points, I get 2 points, they get 2 points, I get 2 points. That equation becomes significantly more dynamic, and that's probably a really good thing for the game. I don't think there's a lot of room for this card to breathe in 1v1 right now. Take that for what you will, but I think the card's really fun, and I'm excited to experiment with him. And hopefully this card doesn't just become a meme, because it is probably my favorite card right now. But yes, honestly, we've been teased for Purple Yasawa for quite some time. Dave talks about it being one of his favorite cards, and I've always been curious to find out what Purple Yasawa was going to be. So I'm really glad it ended up being this Yasawa. I will say I wish he was 4 energy. He's probably never the chosen champion at 5. You probably always just pick the green one instead. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed today's card reveals. Keep being awesome, and I'll catch you in the next one.